I want to welcome in the owner of the Pack-A-Day podcast, Andy Herman. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Super excited and always love talking Packers.
Of course, yeah, there's a lot going on with the Packers, especially the injuries. They're dealing with lots of adversity this year, as we learned that David Bakhtiari had a surgery on his knee. His replacement, Elgton Jenkins, unfortunately suffered a season-ending injury in last week's loss to the Vikings. Plus, the offensive line is already out. Center Josh Myers, I covered him at Ohio State. Great guy. Hope to see all these guys get better. But Aaron Rodgers, as we know, is dealing with a fifth toe injury, as he calls it. We know it's the pinky toe. How significant is that injury, although it's the pinky, but also the significance of being out so many starters on the offensive line?
Yeah, I think the latter seems to be a bit more concerning. I'm certain for Aaron that he would probably love to have that pinky toe injury done and over with. But I think if you're a Packer fan, you're probably looking at the second half of this last game, even after he got stepped on and aggravated it, had to go to the locker room early. He looked nothing short of phenomenal in the second half, making a ton of amazing throws, was mobile enough to move around the pocket, even scramble a couple times. So I think, from a Packers standpoint, if he can play like that, then I don't think you have too much to worry about. And Rodgers is fully point or even, a little bit of a down Aaron Rodgers is better than most quarterbacks in the NFL on most days. So, I think I think it's concerning. And I think the lack of practice time, you could probably even see a little bit in the opening half of that Minnesota game where Green Bay got off to a little bit of a rough start. But overall, I think if you're looking at Green Bay's injuries as a whole, Aaron Rodgers' pinky toe is probably one of the least concerning injuries at the moment. Meanwhile, as you noted, just about everyone that's played in a Pro Bowl game for Green Bay has seemingly decided to get hurt in some capacity this season. Elgton Jenkins, the latest one. David Bakhtiari just had another knee scope, which means he's going to be out a little bit longer, probably towards the end of December. Jair Alexander still not back. Zadarius Smith questionable whether he's ever going to be back this season, even potentially into next season. So a lot of things that are up in the air. And I think, as you mentioned perfectly at the onset, Green Bay's really faced a lot of adversity this season, and for the most part, have been able to come on top throughout the majority of it.
Yeah, and we saw Aaron Rodgers leave that first half early to get treatment on that toe. But it's not a good time for the offensive line to deal with these injuries as they prepare to host the Rams, who are fresh off of a bye, eager to get back in the win column. Yeah. Not to mention that, some fans are concerned about Aaron Donald's consistency, but he's still on track to finish the season with 10 sacks. How do they stop him with all the issues they have on the offensive line?
Yeah, I think it's going to be one of the main questions this weekend. And to be quite frank, I don't think it's a great situation for Green Bay. First of all, you've got obviously Elgton Jenkins, David Bakhtiari, Josh Myers all out. I think any of the five remaining offensive linemen in and of themselves, as your fourth or fifth offensive lineman can be just fine. But I think when you put all five of them together and your best offensive lineman becomes either John Runyan or Billy Turner, I think you start looking at a group that needs some help, and you potentially need to change your game plan a little bit, maybe get the ball out of Aaron Rodgers' hands a little bit quicker. So I just think it doesn't allow you to run the full functionality of your offense the way that you would like. And then, oh, by the way, facing Aaron Donald, Von Miller, who now has had some time to integrate himself with the defense, Leonard Floyd, Agbo Okoronkwo has been playing well. So you have this entire, pass rushing phenom group of the Rams going against, one of the most beat up offensive lines in football. And oh, by the way, Green Bay, one of the few teams to have not had their bye yet. And as you can tell, is tired and pieced together with Band-Aids and Scotch tape at this point. Meanwhile, the Rams, coming off of their bye week, as rested as any team in the NFL. So I don't love this matchup for Green Bay. I think there's a lot to be nervous about. But the only thing I do like is the fact that it is the likely potentially frozen tundra of Lambeau Field and below 30-degree weather. So from a team coming from California, maybe that'll give some advantage to Green Bay. But on paper, this is one that the Rams certainly have their share of advantages on.
Definitely. Yeah, the health is a big one. 8 of their preferred 22 starters are out. So how do you think that the team is dealing with the health of the team heading into week 12? I mean, like you said, they're the last to get the bye. How has that been addressed during practice?
Yeah. And, I think obviously, especially last week, and we'll see what Matt LaFleur does this week, but last week there were a lot of, more rest days and walkthrough periods than peer practices. And, I think Matt is one of the best coaches in all of football with keeping his pulse, his finger on the pulse of the team and making sure that he's not overworking them and that they're getting rest when they need it. And I think we've certainly seen that these past couple of weeks. So I think he's going to continue to do that, and especially up until they get the bye. But as far as dealing with all the injuries, I think the one thing, it just shows the depth that this Green Bay team has. They've missed Adams at times. Aaron Jones is out. We mentioned all the other players. and they found guys to step up. I mean, you have Yash Nyman, who's been making his first playing time this season. He comes in at left tackle, and Green Bay's mostly been able to kind of get through that. So, it's a testament to the coaches for getting these guys prepared and ready. It's a testament to the scouts and GM to have the depth that they have on this team to still be able to go out and win football games. And then maybe a bigger testament even to just having a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers that can, kind of get you out of some of these situations and win some of these football games, even when you're without, 8 of your preferred starters, as you mentioned.
Definitely. I mean, so last week, the Packers picked up the run game in the second half against the Vikings. A.J. Dillon only had 11 carries, but he was efficient, averaging 4.8 yards per rush in place of Aaron Jones. How is it looking for Jones to come back this week? It was looking like a 1-2 recovery, but how is that looking? And then are the Packers going to pick up the run earlier in Sunday's game against the Rams?
Yeah, great question. So I think, first of all, with Jones, it sounds like he is going to practice in some capacity, or at least they're going to give him the opportunity to practice. That's what Matt LaFleur said in his press conference. So we'll see if he can get back practicing. I think that's the good news. My guess, if I had to say, is that they'll give him this week off and then let him, get a couple more weeks through the bye week to get that fully healthy, and then see him after the bye would be my guess. But, if Aaron's ready to play, I know he's going to want to, and I'm sure he's going to do everything in his power to try to get out there and play against the Rams. But as far as, running the ball earlier, I think one of the things that, shaded Green Bay away from running the football, well, twofold, was one, they weren't really getting movement against that Minnesota defensive front. And then two, they weren't being able to pick up first downs and move the chains at all, which really, forces you to get out of your game plan a little bit. So I think if they can stay, in reasonable down and distance, the score is good and they can move the chains, I think they'd love to run the football more, but then I have to more success first, picking up some, 4 or 5 yard gains by A.J. Dillon and not having those, negative or, maybe 1 to 2 yard carries and really kind of get away from it early.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers is another player who we'd like to see get more practice. He's been pretty limited with COVID and now the injuries, but he commented on some of the struggles with the passing game. Usually in the first 15 to 20 plays, they can execute well and score on opening drives. Hasn't really been the case this year. How do you think they can find their rhythm earlier on?
Yeah, so I think a couple of things. I think, first of all, as I went back and watched the first half of that game, I thought Minnesota did a tremendous job anticipating routes, and you could just tell that they were well-versed and well-studied on the Packers offense. They communicated incredibly well. They switched in zones. Like, they were all over everything. There wasn't much opportunity for Rodgers to get rid of the football, throw it within the timing of the offense, and find open receivers. So, first of all, credit Minnesota. Secondly, I think in the second half, what you started to see, especially early in that second half, was Rodgers and Green Bay really starting to take those checkdowns. And I think we're seeing offenses all around the league being forced to take the checkdowns, and you're seeing more defenses play this cover 2 shell and not allowing the explosive pass game. And the best teams are the ones that are willing to take the easy stuff, take the checkdowns, and be patient within the offense. And then what happens inevitably, as it did against Minnesota in the second half, Green Bay starts taking checkdown after checkdown after checkdown. Now Minnesota starts playing up a little bit more. And what happens, they're able to get some of those explosives up over the top, including the deep one to MVS, which at the time tied the game. So I think they just have to play with that, same mentality, take some of the easy stuff and the checkdowns early, and hope that you see some of those explosives open up later in the game.
So the Rams, they added to their passing attack, Odell Beckham Jr. So we were hearing that the Packers were considering that. What can you say about that potential addition to the Packers and now going up against him this Sunday?
Yeah, so it certainly seemed like Green Bay and LA were the two main suitors for Odell Beckham services. It sounds like KC was trying to get involved as well, but Green Bay definitely made a push. There were multiple reports of that, and even the Packers themselves, basically said, I think Rodgers on McAfee said, that he was involved in that process as well. So it's never fun coming in second place in some of those, and now having to play him a couple weeks later. But I think the big thing that you see, especially with wide receivers coming in mid-season, is it does take a little time for them to integrate in the offense. I think we saw that with OBJ in his very first game, him and Stafford not being on the same page, Stafford throwing the pick. That stuff takes time. And again, I think it's going to help the Rams tremendously that they're just coming off of a bye. Certainly doesn't help that they lost Robert Woods, which makes things, more complicated and makes it that you need OBJ to get up to speed sooner rather than later. But I don't think there's any illusion that whether Green Bay acquired him, whether KC acquired him, the Rams, et cetera, the goal with him was to get him ready come playoff time. And I think, Green Bay's still going to have to be aware of him and make sure that, they're not allowing him to get going. But I think the Rams would be more than happy if he's ready to go 100%, knowing the playbook and knowing knowing their offense by the time the playoffs roll around.
Right. And they had that past week to even get him more ready. But there's been lots of drama with Aaron Rodgers this season, late to join the team again. And then there was COVID and the injuries. So there's been tension with him in the franchise for a bit of time. Looking forward, where do you see him in the 2022 season?
Yeah, that's sort of the $1 million question. And as I said at the beginning of the season, and I say it now, and I'll say it again in probably 3-4 months, I think this thing is going to ebb and flow 1,000 more times. And I think there's going to seem that there's times where, of course, he's going to be a Green Bay Packer, and there's no way he couldn't be a Green Bay Packer. And I think there's other times where it's going to feel like he's gone. There's no way he's not gone. And I know that this offseason is going to be incredibly interesting for Green Bay in a variety of ways. They don't have any money. They're really going to struggle to borrow much from future salary caps. And they have a ton of players that are, they need to get under the salary with, including guys potentially like Adrian Amos, Zadarius Smith, Preston Smith. There is a laundry list of players. And then you still have guys like Devontae Adams, who's a free agent. MVS is a free agent. Aaron Rodgers, they have to figure out. So Mason Crosby, they have to figure out. It's just, a lot of big names on this team that have been staples within this, for this franchise for some time. They're going to have to make some serious decisions on, Rodgers being 1A. If I had to guess, I honestly it would still be a coin flip stuff. I have no idea where this is going to go. And I think it's going to make for a very tumultuous, but yet super entertaining offseason. And I guess one that is probably very good for you and I to have great conjecture on over the course of the offseason.
Yeah, you named a bunch of them. The salary cap is a big part of it. And sometimes we've seen those franchise players take cuts so that they could get these guys to join them. But, there's a group of them that could leave. Do you think Aaron Rodgers might bring some of the guys with him to his next team, kind of like Tom Brady and Gronk? Do you see that potentially happening?
Yeah, you certainly could see some of that. Whatever team is going to acquire Aaron is probably a team that has obviously some salary cap space and isn't in the situation that Green Bay's in where, they're doing everything to, kind of keep everything together. It's probably more of a young up and coming team. Denver's following the Tampa Bay playbook to a T, right? They're showing they have a really good defense. They're signing their young receivers like Patrick and, Cortland Sutton, to extensions. They're doing everything they can to show any veteran quarterback that, hey, if we just had a really good quarterback, this is a team that could win a Super Bowl with. We're already at 500 or above 500 team, even with just the Teddy Bridgewater. Imagine if you bring over Aaron Rodgers and a Zadarius Smith, or an Aaron Rodgers and a Devontae Adams, right? You add Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams to any team right now, and you're making that team significantly better in most cases. So I think that you could absolutely see something like that. And that's, again, what's just going to make this offseason, not only for Green Bay, but I think this is going to be, from an offseason standpoint, one of the real, we could see Russell Wilson and a variety of top quarterbacks move teams. It could be a very interesting and unique offseason.
Yeah, well, the Packers started to invest in the future last year, not to Aaron Rodgers' pleasure. They drafted Jordan Love, and there was, even more buildup with the tension between Rodgers and the Packers at that point. But we saw Love struggle in Week 9, completing 19 of 34 passes for 190 yards against the Chiefs. Where do you see the development with him there and with the future of the Packers?
Yeah, I think you would have liked to have seen a little bit more from Jordan in that game. I don't think I'm breaking any news there, but I do think we've seen a variety of quarterbacks, even some of the best, even recently, have some games like that. And I think it's really tough to glean too much from one start. And I think the other thing that really goes unnoticed in that game, one, obviously KC's a really tough place to play. You're playing against the, really tough crowd noise and environment. And to make your first start there doesn't make it any easier either. And then number two, Steve Spagnuolo brought the house time after time after time. And yeah, Jordan needed to be a little bit better in his quick decision-making process and throw some more accurate footballs in those situations. However, Green Bay did a horrendous job of really giving him easy outs to complete some easy passes, and also just picking up some pretty basic blitzes at times. So he needed to be better. The offense needed to be better. The O-line needed to be better. And I think it's really tough to glean, all right, what's the ceiling? And I think even if you look at quarterbacks like Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, and the entire Justin Fields, the entire rookie class this year, there's so many young quarterbacks, both last year and this year, outside of Joe Burrow. Mac Jones is playing well. You have a couple here and there, but there's so many that are really going through these learning pains. Tua is another one. And I think it just takes time. And I think, the patience is going to be key here. And we'll see how patient Green Bay is willing to be, or if they're going to throw Jordan Love right into the mix starting next season. That's, again, just another great offseason topic.
Yeah, and getting those reps is so key. I mean, the game just looks so much different than D1 football. But, since Aaron Rodgers has been out as of late, how's Jordan Love been looking at practice, playing with the ones?
Yeah, so unfortunately I have not been at practice, so I can't speak to it. And really, one of the reasons I don't attend practice that much is because once all of the team stuff starts, the media is kicked out anyway, and it's just you're
Just
only able to see some individual stuff. So there's not much you can glean from it. But yeah, so tough to say. But in training camp, obviously when Rodgers was out, we saw a pretty decent rise from Love from the beginning of rookie mini camps and OTAs, where he really struggled. Really, it was just check down after check down, couldn't get anything going down the field. Towards the end of camp, you started seeing him have much more rhythm and flow within the offense. He had moments. And I think right now, how I describe him as a streaky player. And I think you could even see that a little bit in the KC game on that last drive, where he started to connect with some passes and he started to kind of feel himself a little bit and start, going on a little bit of a run and ultimately lead a touchdown drive. Up until that point, he didn't get in any rhythm. We've seen practices where he gets in a rhythm and he's just on fire the entirety of the practice, where other practices can't really get it going and it just seems to be stuck in neutral through the entirety of it. So again, I think Justin Fields is such a great example of this, where early on Bears fans are watching Fields and being like, ooh, not sure this is it. And then more recently, with the more reps that you get, you're saying, okay, I can see there's a path here for that. This could be a really good quarterback. And again, just patience is a huge virtue here when you have a young quarterback.
Yeah, I was the biggest advocate for Justin Fields. Just give him the ball. He's doing a good job, but let him get those reps. Yeah. So, I mean, it is tough to see these young quarterbacks have these growing pains. But again, it's all about reps and getting in there. But looking ahead at the schedule, is there a trap game that the fans should be worried about? I mean, the Packers are sitting pretty well with their record right now, but, they get the bye. Hopefully they get more healthy. But is there a game down the road that you're pretty concerned about?
Yeah, I mean, this is not a trap game in any way, shape, or form. So I'm maybe cheating a little bit here, but to me, this week's game is by far and away the biggest, red X on the remaining schedule. And again, I just think the week before the bye, the Rams coming off a bye, I think those sort of things, and Green Bay just dealing with the injuries that they're dealing with, coming off a tough loss at the hands of Minnesota on a last-second field goal, maybe having a little bit of a hangover from that. I think that's the game that is easy to see Green Bay trip up, and then I think it's just going to see where they're at health-wise when they come out of that bye week. I'm sure they're going to get some players back. I'm sure they're going to get a boost of energy from having some time off. I honestly think that they can run the table in the second half, or not second half, but once they come back from bye and win the remainder of their regular season games to help them with seeding. But I think this week could be the first time we see in the Matt LaFleur era that he loses 2 games in a row in any one season.
Yeah, that bye week could not come any sooner. I really appreciate you joining me and sharing some insight on the Packers situation right now. We could get as many answers as we could possibly get. So I appreciate you joining me.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. This was great. Happy to do it anytime.